So today I am going to be talking with Jacob, who is going to be one of the players in the upcoming Umbranthal campaign. We're going to get into a little bit of his personal backstory, his character, answer questions that all y'all in chat may have and whatnot. But before we bring him in, we have a little interesting preview. Cross, take it away. All right, so that's a little teaser of some of what is coming down the line. Our good buddy GM Cross is doing a lot of our production and development stuff, so be sure that you hop on over to his channel on Twitch as well and give that a look. But with that, Jake, welcome. How you doing?
Hi, thanks. I'm doing pretty good, all things considered.
Outstanding, very good. What's your day been like? What's new and interesting?
I would say nothing new and interesting in my life because I don't have the kids around right now. But yeah, there's always something going on if the kids are around. They're always doing something, running from 6 a.m. to 9 o'clock at night, just screaming, tearing around the house. I don't have that right now, so my life's a little bit different than the norm right now.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids. Yeah. Yeah, 3 little terrors. I guess I gotta tell you. So
I mean, you can. You don't have to.
Yeah,
Some people don't care to speak about their children on the internet, and I'm totally okay with that. But
right, yeah, I got a 5-year-old Beckett. I got a girl that's turning 3 here pretty soon, Finley, and then I just had a kid this year named Rowan. So
nice. That's awesome. So how old's your oldest?
He's 5.
3 under the age of 6.
Yeah.
I got a sneaky suspicion that your life is a little bit quieter than your wife's right now.
Oh yeah. That's a full-time job for her. I would get like a day off or something, and of course on the weekends, and like the kids would be around all day, and just being around. I love my kids, but like my dad's on the phone with me every day, like, man, your kids are crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, they're your grandchildren, so I mean, you're obligated to deal with them.
And they're little. Little is always they're just a giant ball of insanity, which is good because eventually life beats that out of them, and they just turn into the sullen and morose human beings that we are. So.
Yeah, once they get told no enough, then they just stop enjoying life.
When you're training animals, they call that learned helplessness. It's it puts it in perspective for you. Very welcome. Thanks for jumping in. Zuriel, thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to get right into some D&D stuff here.
Sure.
Why on earth did you throw your hat in the ring to be part of a live streamed D&D campaign?
I have no idea.
Okay, good start. Good start.
It just kind of happened. I was browsing the forums.
Did you trip over something? What?
No, I was just looking for. I was interested in playing D&D online, and it's something I only picked up this year, D&D being brand. I learned to play D&D in the middle of the desert, actually, with other Marines. I was like learning, like in sand. We were surrounded with sand. There's nothing around in 29 Palms. That's where I learned to play D&D. But I played role-playing games before, so it was very familiar to me. And of course, I played other types of games. I was interested in. Initially, I was interested in playing online because I don't have a group to play with around me in COVID. So I was interested in just doing that. And I just happened to come across like your producer or whoever, Sarah had posted the thread on D&D Beyond's website. I was like, oh, this sounds interesting, and then I read it, and I was like, oh, this is well written. This is not written on somebody's phone, like in the bathroom, like that wants to play D&D. You know what I mean? So it was. I just came out of focus there. But as far as my interest for live streaming, I think there's two things that really piqued my interest, because I just sent it on a lark. I didn't expect to hear anything back, first of all. So in order to get a response, honestly, I just wasn't expecting that. And then I got a response, and I was like, okay, what's the value of this? Like, what are the possibilities of playing on a live stream? So the first thing I did was I Googled everyone, of course, like you do. And then I looked into you. I saw that you run a business. It looked like successfully. Well, who knows? And
we were doing all right until COVID.
Yeah, and my dealings with you and Sarah were always really professional. So that cued me into like, okay, this could be interesting, because if they're going through the process of multiple iterations of interviews with people, then who's left at the end is going to be someone that is fundamentally just good to play with, just based on the responses you gave me. And I was interested in what you presented to me as how you DM and all that stuff. So I would say I was not initially seeking to be on a live stream game. Absolutely not. I had to think about that long and hard after I got through like iterations of the interview, and I was like just dwelling on it. It's like, what are like the third order effects of this? Like, people are going to see my face for like years when I don't want them to see my face. But I was like, okay, whatever. So I'm fine with it now. Obviously, I'm committed. We'll see. We'll see.
That's all you can do. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the character that you're gonna at least start off playing in the campaign? Who knows what happens? But no, give us, and like everybody, share what you're comfortable with sharing at this stage of the game. Don't feel obligated to reveal anything that you think ought to play out in RP, or that you want to have revealed in the campaign.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I don't have a lot of secrets in real life or in D&D. So my background was 2 paragraphs long. It wasn't like I put a lot of thought into it, I think, and I'm more of a bullet point guy and an outline guy and a discovery player than a big background guy. So I thought about what I would like to play and what stories interest me. And for me, the most interesting story, maybe because I'm a 90s baby, or at least I grew up in the 90s. A lot of what I'm interested in is the disenfranchised story. So a story arc that follows along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when I was growing up, I consumed a lot of media, especially from my mom, who like homeschooled me during the summer and gave me homework and stuff like that, which was great for my development. But at the time, I didn't really like it, obviously, because I was a kid. But
yeah,
I can
weird.
Yeah. I consumed a lot of media that was, and we've had this conversation before, transgressive fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily the direction that you want to take your campaign, obviously. But that sort of media is very interesting to me, because I like to explore vastly different perspectives than my own. And I like to play tragic characters. Since I began exploring characters in theater and even reading about them or writing or anything like that, I'm very interested in tragic characters. And that is why I am playing a half-drow, which is the quintessential, could be an edgelord, but
yeah, sure.
I wanted to, so the drow themselves are generally, and this will differ, and I'm excited for people to experience your interpretation of the drow, and me and my other fellow player that's going to be playing my sibling in the campaign. exploring the Drow space, because we're going to be playing Drow that aren't necessarily like, we're not playing in the Drow setting. We're going to be outsiders wherever we go. And part and parcel of that was going a step further and alienating myself, in that I made my character half a Drow. So what happens when you put someone in a space where they're a second-class citizen, or more like a Spartan helot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they spend their entire life building up to being accepted, and then that's suddenly just taken away from them, all of their hard work, where they've had to be the most pure version of, say, like, let's for instance use a Spartan, and then they have that taken away from them, and then they've become an outcast, or they're traveling, or they're no longer in that society that they've invested so much in. And I think a lot of the media that we have, especially with these stories that are more prominent in 2020 about both people of color and minorities, sort of tread that line of this is not the experience of every American, and I'm interested in exploring more about that. So that's why essentially I'd like to play that. In my limited DMing experience, I just started like 3 months ago DMing. So, and I tried to, first of all, I advertised for randoms, which is not the best idea, but it's both the best and the worst idea at the same time. And I had them all fill out Google forms, so that it was like a miniature interview. So I could like weed out the chaff, essentially. Like if someone just like looked like they filled it out on their phone, or there was something fundamentally different that they expected from the game than I could give them, then obviously I wasn't going to accept that person. So I tried to curate as much as I could from different demographics without asking the question of demographics, if that makes sense, because I thought that would have been just like a weird question to ask.
Yeah.
And what I found is that the biggest difference I see between players is not necessarily where they come from, but it's really age. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I think that in my limited experience, people my age are interested in like theological, like purity stories, like I'm talking about, which is those that are very committed to a way of life, and then how that interacts with the rest of the world. And then people that are younger, your Gen Zs, your Zoomers, are very interested in stories about sociological inclusivity. So right away, like I saw a huge difference in playing with I actually snuck into this is going to sound weird. I went into a game with players that were younger just to see how they played, and I was amongst them as a spy. I didn't tell them what age I was. I think they kind of figured it out, but they were for a while there, they were just talking crap about older people, and I was just like quiet on voice chat. But they're very like, they will roll like the most oddball races, and like, hey, we got a party of a giant cow person and a goblin and an angel person and like a demon, and then they would act as though there was no societal consequence for being those things.
Right.
And they came from the environment that everybody should be included, which I think is very idealistic, and more idealistic than where we come from in our perspective, being a little bit older. And I thought that was really interesting. And whenever I play with Gen X players, they're always very interested in F the man anarchy. So, and like very harsh truths about the real world. That's what Gen Xers like to play.
That's the joy of having been raised by baby boomers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I think you're right in a lot of that. I definitely think my experiences have mirrored that in a lot of ways. And I think that what is interesting to me, and something that I hope will play out in this campaign, is that ideas of radical acceptance, for lack of a better term, I think are incredibly important for getting past sort of falsely held or mistaken beliefs that we sort of, by virtue of our biology, default to assigning to groups of people. You know, we are tribal creatures from an evolutionary biology and an evolutionary psychology standpoint. But the ideal, at least in my head, is that we're trying to take the knowledge that we have and use that to help get beyond that sort of easy to run up against limit. And I do hope that in this campaign that we are able to explore that in a way that is engaging and interesting, but it is also compelling, right? The reality is we do not live in a world where there is just generalized acceptance. There is a lot of tribalism, and I think that in this story that we're going to be telling together, my hope at least is that helps people think about it at the end of the day. Is just think about why do I do the things I do? Why do I think the way I think? You know, while entertaining. You know, I think that entertaining people needs to be kind of first and foremost. So so with your choice to go with this half-drow character, what do you care to share what class you're playing and why?
Oh yeah, this right shoe in. That was perfect transition. So I'm obviously playing a paladin. So someone who believes very deeply in theological purity. And they're in changing their beliefs is changing basically a way of life for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I wanted to express through the play of my character and the evolution of my character. If they were to change how they are and who they are, it would be a change in lifestyle. And
sure.
yeah, so that's why I'm mostly interested in a paladin. I think you could play any character like that, no matter what class they are. But I think the paladin is really the key. The key, like I am the knight, and this is what I represent and why I represent it, and this is what I believe, and I'm going to enforce that, or try to enforce that on the world, or impose it, as it were.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely, I think, there is certainly a tendency to view paladins in that way, right? Like the paladin isn't necessarily the edgelord, the paladin's the wet blanket.
You can't do that.
Everything that everybody else in the party wants to do, the paladin standing there shaking.
Yeah.
But I also think that that's an interesting thing to see play out, because I think many of us who have had the experience of having very strongly held beliefs need to find the space where it's like, well, yeah, I believe it, but is it a belief that I ought to be imposing from the outside on others? I definitely think that that playing a paladin who also is having this experience of otherwise being an outsider can be an interesting interplay. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it for sure.
Yeah, full ethos.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Trackhawk would like to know, playing a paladin, do you think it'll be difficult to temper your own real life beliefs when the character requires you to do the opposite of what you as a person would do?
No, because I'm so desensitized from role playing so many terrible, horrible people that I have no reservations about going either way on the spectrum. And I think that because I've done what I would consider like a deep dive into all these different characters that I've played over the years, like I played in different mediums as well. I've done a lot of text-based role playing, where it's like you write out what you're doing, which plays into great because I like writing. But yeah, I played probably, I think my character count on that particular medium is close to 200
Okay.
different perspectives. And I played everything from like a tribal hunter to like a tribal sage to a merchant, every variation of merchant or agent or anything like that. I played nobility, I played murderers, I played good people, I played bad people. I've had just a gamut of different perspectives that I had to consider within the consent that is provided with the framework of a game. And I think that's one of the great things about, say, for instance, like let's talk about D&D, is that you have the person running the game and the players all consenting to the same rules. And then there's the unspoken rules that are talked about at the first session. Like, these are the things that we are not going to let, the lines that we're not going to cross. But you get to pick, you get to pick which type of story that you want to pursue. And so yeah, I don't feel like I'll be reserved in doing what my character would do. I think as a player, I'm going to consider what is fun for everybody else and interacting with everybody, obviously, because I don't want everybody to have a bad time. It's like, oh, that's what my character would do, so I'm just gonna murder everybody. That's not fun for anybody involved. But taking with that the how can I make this work attitude is pretty important as a player, just like a DM. And I'm gonna use this example because it's fresh in my mind. Like, I just had this happen to me last night, so I know that I'm still trying to get better as a DM. But I had a player, bless his soul, who was playing like this giant cow person, a furbolg, and sent to me in the initial, like, I'm creating this character and I want to know if this is okay. He has a giant barrel of water strapped to his back, filled, and then he has the ability with 2 of the spells to manipulate the water, to control the water, and then to turn it to ice. So what had happened was, when we came across locked doors, was like, I'm going to take this water, put it in the lock, and then freeze it and break the lock. And I was just like, my initial reaction was like, you just broke the game. Like, I can't do anything with that. Like, that's a cheat code. Like, and I was like, no, you can't do that. Like, that's against the rules. I forbid you. And then I realized that because I'm a bad DM, then I realized, like, not 10 minutes later or whatever, I was like, oh, you guys don't even have a rogue in your party, so it doesn't even matter. Like, that there's all these locks that you can't get into. There's nobody over there picking the lock anyway. So I just changed the environment, and I said, it's a popular phrase, yes, and in theater and in D&D in those circles. Yeah. You can try that, but you're going to have to roll Arcana instead of Dexterity in order to try and do that. And it changed literally nothing else about it. My initial reaction, though, was just getting mad because he was smarter than me. Like, like he bamboozled me. So
yeah, that's what they do. Neckbone in chat is saying that he has they have no idea who you're talking about, but that furbolg sounds pretty badass. So
yeah, that's him.
Yeah,
I see that he came to watch me and laugh at me.
I like to think of it as the No Country for Old Men solution to lock picking. Just shoot it right out of the door. He's obviously, like, that was perfect. I'm pretty sure he actually told me that's what he wanted to do at first, and I was like, that won't come into play, or like I just ruled it out of my mind because I was dealing with all the other players. Sure. But yeah, he did ask to do it. It's just I didn't realize it was going to be like that. You know what I mean? So that was my bad. Oh, really. Yeah. Well, that is the thing about any sort of game scenario where you end up playing the referee role, right? Whatever you call it, DM, GM, doesn't matter. But that referee role is that you often find yourself having to deal with these insanely creative people who come up with stuff that you would not have come up with. If you had, it would already be in your variant of the game. And then they throw it at you and you go,
You got
Let
me.
me think. Yeah. Either it's you got me, or let me think about this one for a second.
Yeah.
Let me figure that out. So
yeah, I've had to take tactical pauses before where I was like, okay, I need to. All right, we're on a break.
Right.
We'll come back. Let me Google this.
Yeah, well, there is a reason that the books are right there for when we get into campaign time. I am a big believer in the fact that no one human being can know all of the rules exactly. I'm probably wrong. There probably are people who know every single rule in every single book. I'm not one of them. I do not possess that skill set. What I possess is the idea of I know most of it, and if I'm not getting it, well, we can look, right? Like one of my back when I had a real life, and a grown-up career, I taught and worked a lot in hazardous materials response in the fire service. And our number one rule was don't memorize anything. We don't want you to memorize a single thing. We want you to look everything up every time. What we want is for you to know how to find stuff. So yeah, I do think that realizing that players are always going to throw you curveballs is critically important. So what was the first role-playing game that you played, whether it was a text-based or a tabletop or anything like that? Like, how did you get into role-playing games to begin with?
I would say the first one I'm sure I played other ones, like me running around the yard and like hitting other kids with sticks or something. That's a role-playing game.
Sure.
It's not
something with a defined rule set.
Yeah.
Less free play and more organized.
Right. I think it was Vampire the Masquerade. I think one of my friend's older brothers was really into it, and he was like, your stereotypical 1990s. I play Vampire the Masquerade, and I have a super long beard back before it was in style, and I wear black all the time, and like he knew a bunch of random stuff about like mythology and everything else, and that was my first experience with just role-playing games in general, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, and I get to play a vampire and we get to do stuff. And then my next one was Legend of the Five Rings, which was essentially just a conglomeration of all these different Asian cultures with samurai clans that elected a feudal leader, an emperor. And there's like magic and like undead and all that kind of stuff in it as well. But yeah, all that stuff's, I think, Legend of the Five Rings I don't think is current with its role-playing game. I want to say that the card game still exists. The cool thing about the card game, actually, Matt Colville has this great video about this, is that Legend of the Five Rings, they would actually write the story around the card tournaments that they ran. So like you would have players representing each clan at the tournament, at the professional tournament that they ran. And then depending on who won, that's how the story would win. And then they would write books on that. So yeah, so that was pretty cool to hear about, because I never knew that when I played the game in the 90s, but that was a real thing, I guess. I was like, what a cool way to be like a game company, to allow the players to develop the story and involve them and stuff like that. So, and too bad it's not, I don't think it's really documented anywhere except maybe by the company who may or may not still be in the same iteration of the same corporation. So
sure. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So how long then have you been into and playing D&D?
So it's been about a year. I started, like, my first game was me pretending to not know what D&D was, and I was just so bored that I was like, okay, I talked to the corporal who was running the game, and I was like, can you just like put me in the game? I'm like doing nothing with my time over here at night. So can you just put me in the game? And he was like, yeah, would you like to play a troll? And I was like, I would love to play a troll. And that's what I did. I tried to kill the party in the first, I was an NPC, so I wasn't in the party. You know what I mean? I was
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I was working for the DM, and that was
Mhm.
my first experience doing that. So that was fun. So yeah, that was my
Yeah,
first
not
experience.
non-party PCs are outstanding.
Yeah, you got that special glow, you got that uniqueness to them. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I obviously knew what like role playing was. I'm a theater kid. I was in a couple plays in high school, and instead of going the theater route, my dad, when I was still living at home, 17, I just graduated high school. He told me he had a job, so that killed my theater career basically.
Sure.
Love you, Dad. But yeah, after that, I gave up on my dreams essentially and joined the Marine Corps. So yeah.
Well, I'm happy to afford you this opportunity to rediscover a small spark of your childhood dreams.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, Chris. Yeah, but I all throughout, like pretty much since I was a teenager, I was doing text-based role play anyway, and uh, especially for teenagers and like discovering your identity, it's super interesting to take out like what we visually see of each other because it's not the same thing as role playing at a table where like you're around your friends and like you're
Right.
embarrassed to to play this role. I mean, unless you're around theater kids and we're all weird nerds that like to like just be wacky.
Sure.
Um, but like be role playing via text was super interesting because you could literally like do anything and be unlike yourself, and it was an interesting way to explore identity, especially as a teenager. Even before I realized what I was doing, like that's what I was doing. I was like very curious about other types of people because I largely grew up in like kind of a very predominantly white area, very homogenous
Mm-hmm.
culture over there in that part of Washington State. So um, I would say, especially, and I think it's a great tool, and I love to see teenagers playing D&D now. And my experience with them and playing with them is really fun because um, they are super cool with like exploring like all kinds of weird stuff
Mm-hmm.
about themselves and just making they'll feel like real self-conscious, but as soon as you allow them to like as soon as you don't make fun of them for trying to role play, then they are all about it, and
Yeah.
they see it as like a safe space, as it were. And then they just have fun, and then they're just like crazy and wacky, and then like you can just feel the energy off of them, and it's really fun to play with younger players because of that.
Sure. I think that that's something that you see almost anytime you're able to work with, youth, early adolescence, high school age, in a space where they sort of are able to drop some of the masks that we all have at that age. The figuring out your identity comes with a whole lot of, at least in my experience, walling things off. And
Anxiety.
yeah, and it comes with it takes knowing that you are in that place where you can kind of drop that a little bit. And I think the term safe space gets thrown around in ways that sometimes it gets used as though it's a pejorative, but the reality is we're all looking for spaces where we feel safe to try these different things out. None of us go out and try on a new idea if it doesn't feel like we're going to be okay with it. That's why comedians workshop stuff.
Yeah.
They don't bring that material out at the show that they charged you $90 for a ticket for.
Yeah.
Um, there's a different expectation there. So, what? So, how long have you been DMing? A few months, you said?
August.
Okay, so a few months.
Yeah.
What prompted the switch? Why, or not the switch, but jumping into that side of the game?
I'm interested in. I'd say that my interest in being a player is less than being a DM. I find a lot of interest I find a lot of fun for myself being more of a facilitator, being a yes-ander at the table, or I really enjoy teaching. So that's been a large part of my life. I instruct a variety of different things, and now D&D is one of them. Even though I'm not necessarily like super good at D&D, I know how to coach people. I know how to mentor people. So that has been something that I like because there is that aspect to it. And being able, especially like because I specifically recruited for some of my games brand new players, because I was like, what is it like to be new to role playing, but not know like how to do anything. So and furthermore, the kind of the selfish aspect for me was I want to learn the game better and be a better player. And the best way to do that is to become a DM, to understand something inside and out. And it's the same way when you achieve mastery in any subject, you have to be able to teach it and break it down to its very like the core essence of what it is, simply to someone that's new. Because if you can't do that, then you don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. You certainly have not internalized it enough for it to be to have that sort of intuitive relationship with it. And I mean, I think we both know full well that there are a lot of people out there who are masters in something that, despite that, still can't teach it. Like,
oh yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You can be an incredibly high level performer. I mean, I've always, in my own mentoring and coaching work, I've always been a big believer in the fact that the best coaches are usually the people who were not the best at the thing.
Yeah.
People who are the natural gazelles tend to just go. They never had to stop and overcome massive problems in their own thinking to figure out how to do it. It came more intuitively.
Yeah.
And you know, to me, certainly the best coaches I've ever had have been people who had to work to figure out what they were doing. I always said growing up that for me, that was one of the reasons why I felt like math was never a strong suit for me. I was never math minded. When I went back to college in my late 30s to finish my degree, I took had to take the standard placement test, and I placed into like, math for shrubs, essentially. Okay, the options are we prune you or you can take this math class. And my wife was like, well, why don't we have you practice a little bit and then go take it again and see if you can get into a higher class? I'm like, no, because I don't know it. Like that's the class I belong in. And I ended up having to take, I think, 3 remedial algebra classes before I got to a college math class. But what I figured out at this stage of the game was, oh, okay, just slow down, you'll figure it out. Whereas as a kid, my math teachers were all people who loved math. They were all math gazelles. They got it. It made sense to them. So when I went up to them and said, half the time it was, well, just try harder. And I don't think that was an indictment of them as teachers necessarily. I think it was just, 12 years of Catholic schools, there was a lot of try harder.
You're obviously not trying hard enough because you're not learning.
Right. Well, in all fairness, my dad did tell me at one point that I could see better if I tried harder. So he was a very interesting man. Is a very interesting man. He's just mellowed a little bit. I think it helps that he sleeps a little bit more. So Ferry would like to know, what is your favorite curveball to throw in a game? And that can be as a player or as a DM.
Okay. Okay. I'll take, well, I think some of my players are in the chat, but I will go ahead and maybe pull back the curtain a little bit. I 100% love to portray the party with an NPC. I love doing that. That is so fun to me, especially if I can build the trust and the relationship with them. And it's only going to be like, I'm not like out there with the Always Sunny Philadelphia, like connecting like, string to everyone. It's like, how can I portray them with all these NPCs? I only choose one, but it's normally the most charismatic one.
Sure, that would make sense. I mean, it's, you know, in order to be betrayed by someone, they have to let you in to begin with.
Yeah.
That's generally going to be somebody who's pretty charismatic.
Yeah, and bit of a meta thing too. Like sometimes most of the time players, because you get them into this routine of like, okay, this is the way that we play the game, right? I'm going to present you with a quest giver, and then they're going to give you stuff. They're going to reward you for doing this, and then you just pull back. You just flip it on its head later on when they realize that the quest giver is actually the big bad evil person or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, especially if you're talking about persuasive people or anybody that can manipulate other people, they're naturally probably going to be charismatic. Like it's not like we're very intuitive creatures just as human beings, but at the same time, like it takes a lot of skill in order to deceive people. So if you're going to get deceived, it's going to be by someone that knows what they're doing. It's not going to be by like, you know, Joe Schmo that's like, oh, hey, over there, you should go do that. That's a good idea.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that'd be definitely my favorite thing. My other thing, curveball. I guess I could talk about my. I do play a paladin in another game, which is not indicative of how I'm going to play this paladin like at all. I am playing a character that I started literally as a gimmick. It's a meme that I saw on the interwebs. I saw Sir Terrence Crews in his paladin armor, and the meme is, you know, when you put all your points into strength and charisma, which is true because he's not only ridiculously good looking, but he's very personable and he's very charismatic, and he's also very strong, obviously. So he's perfect paladin. So I did a few things with that character, and the first thing that I decided on was like, how is he going to deal with people? And I was like, well, I'm going to pump his charisma as high as it can go, and then I'm going to have him try and intimidate people by flexing on them. And that's literally what I have him do in the game. It's like whenever he runs into a problem, he tries to flex his way out of it, which oftentimes just gets the party into trouble. So the party now just runs damage control on my paladin just constantly, just like they have like, so the bard in the party is always trying to convince my paladin to do the smart thing. And she's figured out how to convince him by relating it back to, let's say, Ethos, but doesn't always work. I check my checklist of like, okay, is this what Heronius would want him to do? Why would he want him to do this? Okay, is this something that's going to inflict some damage upon his ego if he were to do it? So if you pass all of those checks, like you can convince my paladin to do most anything, as a matter of fact.
Outstanding. Matt would like to know, what is D&D culture like currently in the Marine Corps? That in his experience, it's been a popular game in the military since the game came around. What has been, and obviously you founded it 29 Bombs, so what's it like now?
You know, I didn't realize that people played D&D in the Marine Corps until the past year. I don't know why, but I never encountered it. So I was as surprised as everybody else to see a player's handbook and a dungeon master's guide in the middle of the Mojave Desert. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, well, I know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to slide my way into this game and act like I don't know what I'm talking about. Because it was also like a professional thing as well, because I was their boss essentially. So it would have been like awkward to have like approached it a different way, but not that they would have judged me for playing D&D because they were playing D&D, but I can't like grow out with them. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's different. Yeah.
Well,
hello there, youngsters. Show me what you're doing. Right.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yes, right.
Yeah. But I think that overall, I think this is more of a generational thing, more than anything. And I can say from my experience of being a recruiter, kids nowadays, no offense to us, our generation, way smarter, way more interested in being intelligently challenged, with mind games and not mind games, but brain teasers and things like that. Like being mentally stimulated is a top priority for the younger generation. They want to resolve problems and they want to figure stuff out. And if they're not being challenged, they lose interest almost immediately. And that's because there's such a high bar, I think, nowadays for people to be intellectually stimulated, that something as complicated and as foreboding as Dungeons and Dragons is more popular even in the military, because the military in large part is really just a microcosm of the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely more popular than it used to be. I can confidently say that. But that's just anecdotally. I think that also in large part, I think it's a logistical thing, because you can play D&D with a little bag of dice and 2 books, and you can bring that anywhere. So that's
right.
That's also part of it. It's a logistical thing. So nowadays, I think people have more access to video games and consoles and bringing them everywhere. But that's definitely not the case with the Marine Corps, because we don't often sleep in buildings when we go to places.
Sure.
Normally in holes or in the woods or something like that. Even if we don't need to, like we could sleep in a tent, but we're not going to sleep in a tent because this is the Marine Corps, and we're going to sleep in a ditch and just get rained on because that's good for you. That kind of mentality. So,
Yeah. I understand that mentality quite well. Brofist would like to know, who is your favorite DM and why is it them?
Brofist. Okay. Yeah. First of all, love the name. Secondly, who is my favorite DM? Do I have to say Chris because this is a stream?
No, you don't at all.
This is a trap. Like I'm being set up. I've been playing with a guy who we affectionately call Dave from England for a long time, and he's just very good at what he does. So I would have to say Dave is my favorite DM. If you're talking about like celebrity DM or anything like that, I do watch a lot of, obviously, Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, and Satine Phoenix, and Brennan Mulligan. Brennan Mulligan, is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Brennan Lee Mulligan. Yeah. Okay. So I do watch a lot of them, but obviously I'm not in their game, so I can't directly appreciate what it is that they do.
Sure.
But yeah, I would have to say the guy that I've been playing with for years now.
Okay. Outstanding. I want to say a quick thank you to everybody who has dropped into chat here. I'm trying to make sure I keep up with questions as they come in, but please do continue to throw them in there if there are more. Trackhawk, not going to go to the extent of having to actually carry 2 books, right? Just a phone and everything's there. That works great as long as you can charge the phone.
Yeah, that's not the case in the desert. You can't charge a phone in the desert.
Well, you could.
Well, yeah, if you had like a sun panel, but then it gets damaged, and then it's
right. Yeah, no, I come from a world in which anything with batteries in it is immediately suspect. So yeah, for sure. So throughout these interviews with everybody, I have given the opportunity for players to ask me questions. And I know you have been waiting with bated breath to do so. So, send it.
Yeah, it's like we don't communicate regularly. I've just been waiting to put you on the spot. Okay, so now that we got this, right? Let's see. I have to know, what was the social scene like in the 1980s with D&D? Because that is a world that is completely foreign to me. A, because you started playing D&D before I was born. But also I'm very curious about it, because I knew what D&D kids were like when I was in high school from like 2001 to 2005. and I just have to know what was the 80s like? Please tell me.
Well, so I can tell you my experience of it, and growing up on the south side of Chicago, it was, I mean, very far south, but far south end of Chicago, Catholic schools, an area where if somebody asked you where you were from, you identified by what parish you lived in. Like that's the identity packet, so to speak. And it was absolutely a fringe thing. It was the, whatever pejorative you want to assign to the kids who for the most part were not playing sports, whether you want to go with the now colloquially acceptable nerd, or whatever other term was applied. But for the most part, it was, my circle were kids who were pretty active. We ran around the neighborhood a lot. We were constantly, before we found the game, constantly in some version of, cops and robbers, playing war, having pretend sword fights, so essentially the free play precursors to role playing, right? Those sorts of things. We were all, again, everybody within my group, we all did fine in school. There were a handful of kids that were definitely like like they were going to be a class valedictorian type, but most of us weren't. Most of us were pretty, we were smart enough. We got by. Nobody was being held back for anything, but we weren't putting our effort necessarily into other things other than D&D. And that became the thing where there was a lot of space, right? It wasn't something that a lot of people were into. It wasn't something that parents had any interest in following or understanding. And so you just had this space to go do your thing. And it brought a lot of freedom with it. So I think my experience was that it was just this, it was a game that you could get into. You could create a character. You could try on different personalities. You could try on different ways of interacting. And for the most part, I mean, again, era I grew up in, I was playing with exclusively other guys from, that I went to school with or had gone to school with. So it was, also just nobody was telling you to go to bed. So you were up till for, a night of playing D&D, drinking joke cola and telling dick and fart jokes. Like that was a big part of it for my experience of the game. There were, I certainly think there were different experiences even in the area that I was in. I played with a group of guys who were all theater of the mind. I had other friends who were in campaigns that were heavy mini campaigns, and they had a whole different way of interacting with the world. And so that I would say was my experience of it. I started playing in 86, dealt with a little bit of the kind of side eye of, is this game okay, from the whole satanic panic thing. But I also, again, I grew up on the far south side of Chicago, and nobody really took that kind of thing all that seriously. They just assumed you were a chuckle-headed idiot. They didn't read anything nefarious into it.
Right.
So we didn't deal with a lot of that. There was some of it in the periphery, but that would probably be a reasonable summation.
Okay. Let's talk about sword fighting, because you said something and I started to laugh. I wasn't laughing at your response, but like you triggered a memory in my brain.
Yeah.
Where there was a period of time, and I'm gonna call it my brother here, where for like 1 or 2 years, he got really into LARP sword fighting, and he dragged me into that, and that was so fun because we were just
Society for Creative Anachronisms level.
Yeah.
of LARPing, or
No, it was more just
okay.
like kids hitting each other in the backyard with like PCP pipe wrapped in like foam.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, you guys wrapped it and stuff? That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean it was the early 2000s. We had
Oh,
feelings
had to start
then.
nerfing stuff, right?
Yeah, we had to reduce the damage on the
Right.
swords. You know what I mean? It was too powerful.
Sure.
Just a regular PCP pipe would have been considered a magic weapon. So, but but yeah, I remember that just randomly when you said that. I was just
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh man, there's so many sword fights that I've had with my brother and other random kids. And this actually just happened to me. Not sword fighting, but earlier this year, I was at the park because I was taking my kids to the park, and there was LARPers there, and there was 2 lines of people just running at each other and swinging swords, and I was like, oh, look at those nerds, and then I was like, oh, that looks so fun. I wish I could do that. Oh, I'm here with my kids. Oh, man, dang.
Yeah, no, we never had anything so organized that it could be referred to as LARPing at the time. It was very much just kids wandering the neighborhood and picking up sticks and swinging them and fighting with them. Like it was not, it wasn't necessarily meant to be some exploration of a game set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to tell me that as a kid or anybody in America or around the world hasn't picked up like a broom and hasn't used it as a bow staff at some point in their life,
right,
you're a liar.
Right.
I know that you have fake fought and you're just self-conscious about it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At some point, yeah, you picked up a stick and you've done a little sword fight with one of your friends at some point.
Right.
I remember to train because I had a friend who was really good at Filipino knife fighting.
Okay.
And we didn't have our practice knives on us all the time. So what it devolved into was just us stabbing each other with pens. So like I would get bored in the office or whatever, and I would just go over to him and I would sneak up on him and I'd start stabbing him, and he'd grab his pen and then he would fight me, and then we would be cutting each other. So I mean, like I think play in any space that we exist in, that's just part of being a human being, and I think it's definitely great for building skills, because now I'm really good at knife fighting. So don't come at me with a knife, because I have honed that over years of someone who knew that what they were doing.
Right. Absolutely. So Ferry would like to know whether it happens to come up in game or not, is there one thing you would like to try exploring with your character?
A lot of stuff. I think it really depends on, I'm more of an exploration guy. I've set the tone, I think, that I want to represent with my character. I know where he comes from a theological standpoint, from his mindset, from his ethos. I am interested in seeing which direction his ethics go. And I think that's the best answer that I could give, is like, I'm interested in seeing if he goes left or right in the whole like spectrum. Not doesn't say that like, alignment isn't a thing, but I mean, I think alignment can be kind of an excuse to be lazy with how you are representing your character and like their evolution and their story arc. But I've started my story arc in a particular place, and I am definitely going to be exploring his ethical development throughout the campaign. And I think that's true of any human being or any humanoid in Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, that gets into a new tribe. Like we talk about tribalism, like you get with a new group of people, that's your tribe, that's your family now. That's who you either seek acceptance from or whom you reject in order to try and find another tribe.
Right.
And I think that's probably the mainstay of the story that I'm interested in, is like his personal development as far as his ethics.
Okay. Trackhawk would like to know that as a player, what is your goal for this campaign?
As a player?
Yeah.
Get to not die in the first couple levels.
Okay.
Let's baby
Good
steps.
start.
So baby steps.
Right. I would like to get to level 2.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's get through the first session. I think as a player, I'm mostly interested in and the thing that makes me most excited about this is not necessarily like nobody could watch this. We could find out that nobody likes this program. Like nobody wants to watch us play. But I think that the level of creativity and the what everybody's bringing to the table is so good that regardless of people want to watch us, it's going to be fun for all the players.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, everybody is. It's such a high level that this feels to me like a superstar game because everybody is treating it professionally. Everybody is coming to the table like I am here to play my character and do well and be conscious of each other in how we're playing for the maximum enjoyment, yet still tell a good story. And like you said, it's more of an art project. It's more so it is a performance in some way. So that's for me. That I guess that's another piece that I really like about it. It's I am performing, which I don't get to do anymore because I'm too old to start my acting career. And it's something that I don't get to do a lot because of my schedule as it has been, which is changing. But and that's a big part. I am 100%. I can be an attention whore, 100%. I'm all about it.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Don't kill me.
I will remind you that Steve Buscemi spent like a decade as a New York City firefighter before he actually got into acting. So that you may not.
No, that's true.
The clock may not have run out yet.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that guy.
Reignite your childhood dreams.
Yeah, it could. I don't know. Well, we'll see. I mean, I'm not getting any better looking, so. And neither is Stephen Buscemi. So
yeah, I was gonna say I think you guys are actually fine. Like, I think you could take over for him just perfectly okay.
Yeah, sorry if you're watching this, Mr. Buscemi. He's not.
I'm sure.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. I had asked him if he was going to be able to make it, and he had other.
Oh, he turned you down. All right, he had another obligation on.
Yeah, he was already booked. Was the problem? So
yeah.
We talked about it for a while, and he made it seem like, if I could, I would, but I can't. So
yeah. Can I ask another question?
You can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So, all right, my next.
I know you made a list. So.
I did. I am an outliner. I make lists. of things. Yeah, I have to outline my life or I forget everything basically. So, yeah. Have you consumed much D&D pulp fiction like R.A. Salvatore, Dragonlance, and stuff like that? And
no.
If so, oh, you haven't?
No, I have not. So I played the game. I played the game. I immersed myself in playing the game when I played the game. I never consumed a ton of fantasy literature when I was growing up, whether it was D&D related. I didn't read Tolkien growing up. I read mythology. I read the Greek myths. I read the Egyptian myths. I read the Norse myths. Those excited me and interested me. I read a lot of history. My fiction-wise, as a kid, I probably read more of the like the Tom Clancy style thriller type genre. That was more of my reading when I was younger. As I've gotten older, I've read a whole lot more of fiction across a lot of genres. But no, I could not tell you a single character or a single storyline from a Dragonlance novel. Okay. So that I actually hope that is going to end up being a good thing,
Could be.
Because one of the things that I have always stressed about in writing is that to me, there's a very fine line in writing between having synthesized something enough that you can make it your own and just doing a book report.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I have sort of dealt with that throughout my life is that I curate a lot of what kind of thing I'm going to read. And most of the time, the stuff that I'm reading isn't necessarily the stuff that I'm trying to write.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to fiction authors right now, people that I would say have deeply informed my thinking on storytelling and writing, Neil Gaiman, Cormac McCarthy, Samuel Beckett, Chuck Palahniuk. Even though I said we're not going to be doing a whole lot of transgressive fiction, I think
I
think
right
that Palahniuk's work is phenomenal. Arun Dahadi Roy, Sherman Alexie's stuff I love. Louise Erdrich's stuff I think is incredibly compelling and interesting. Those are probably some of the fiction authors who have sort of most shaped what I look for in fiction.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I skipped all of the D&D books and had a lot of friends who were deeply into them, who read all of them. You know,
Yeah.
I was the same, huge Star Wars kid, loved Star Wars, didn't read a single novel.
There's a lot of them.
There were a lot of them.
And they're all irrelevant now. So, I mean, you're good.
Yeah, no, I was ahead of my time.
Yeah.
But I have since, you know, in the last 10 years, 5 years, read some of the new canon. But yeah, my thing was that those experiences fit into particular silos for me. Star Wars was a thing that I went and saw at the movie theater. D&D was a game I played with my friends.
Okay, fair enough.
And sort of the stuff that got wrapped around it was less interesting to me.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I was definitely the kid that read fantasy books like in class. Like I was the kid in the back. So I read two types of fantasy books. Well, one sci-fi. So I read a lot of BattleTech books, which was just giant robots that shoot things. And not just that, but it was more like I don't know, something similar to like War of the Roses in our history.
Sure.
And then Wheel of Time, which was like the quintessential 1990s fantasy novel series, which is entirely too long and entirely too bloated. And there's actually an Amazon series coming out of that, so I'm excited for that. But the most interesting, I started reading The Wheel of Time when I was in 7th grade. And that is a time where you do not understand females as a young man. And that book series was so confusing for me because the women are so like fully developed characters in the sense that the gender rules in The Wheel of Time are like the world is like been turned on its head. Like it's so strange. It was especially strange because I was in my teenage brain like thinking that this was relevant to the real world, but it was so like beyond the pale of what I understood about women that I actually remember this because I'm gonna out myself real quick, but I think I asked my parents at one point why women were a particular way, but I wasn't asking about real women. I was asking about women in the book. I was trying to figure it out, but like women in Wheel of Time, at least my memory of it, I haven't read them for like, I don't know, like 20 years now. But women in Wheel of Time, the way that it works is like women have magic.
Okay.
And men who try to learn magic eventually go insane because of this curse put on like the male half of magic in the world. And so that meant that women had a hugely prominent position in every society in the world because they were not only like the most they established their own independent, unique society in which they were advisors to every nation, essentially. And they it was just a very interesting dynamic with the way that our world is, in that they had something that men didn't, and could exert power if they wanted to, which they did in some ways, more subtle ways. But it was very interesting to read as a kid and thinking like, this is what women are. And I was just like, it just further confused my understanding of, my interaction with women, until I figured out, I was like, oh yeah, this is just a fantasy book. I need to chill out with the direct interpretation.
Right. Yeah. That's, that is, I think, always a challenge of fiction is really well done fiction seems completely plausible. It seems that it 100% works that way, and depending upon what it's trying to sell you, that may or may not translate to the real world.
Absolutely.
So Ferry would like to know, and this is for both of us, what is your favorite Greek myth? Do you have a favorite Greek myth?
Favorite Greek myth? I would probably have to. So, it would probably be the one that I am most familiar. Can I dodge this question? I'm gonna kind of answer this question.
We'll see how well you do.
So
make a dex save.
I really, and this is such a very basic answer for military guy, but I really love the Stephen Pressfield novel Gates of Fire. Not the 300 movie, which is good in its own right if you want to enjoy comic book movie. But Gates of Fire is such an interesting book if you can get past the extreme, I was the son of such and such times 50 in each beginning of the chapter. Every generation. But the story itself is very interesting because Stephen Pressfield did a very good job, and there's a reason why it's one of the most popular, if not the most popular, historical fiction book, and he's an honorary Greek citizen. It's because he represented the Greek people in such an honest and brutal and unapologetic way to their way of life that you see represented in history books, but it's actually a piece of fiction, and it's a piece of work where people existed in that society that was extremely brutal, and it was the way that it was, and the culture was very conservative to change compared to the rest of Greece. And it was very, very interesting and very compelling for that reason, because it was a story not about fantastical beasts. It was a story about people who either chose to live that way because of the way the rest of the world worked, or who were indoctrinated in that culture and believed in it. So that's my answer.
Okay. We'll both acknowledge that it's sort of a Greek myth.
Yeah.
There are mythic elements to that story, though not exactly what most people refer to when they say Greek myth. Ferry, as far as Greek myth for me, do I have a favorite Greek myth? I think some of the more compelling stuff is the stories that surround Orpheus for me. I'm not a huge Greek myth guy. I too tend towards the Celtic myths and the Norse myths a little bit more. If I had to pick a favorite, deity, though, out of any of the sort of classic European Mediterranean pantheons, I got to admit, I'm probably gonna go Osiris. Just a cool dude. Seems like a kind of guy that you'd want to hang out with. But
bring him home.
But yeah, why not? But let's see here. Is there any other questions floating around in there? Magnificent would like to know, what kind of player are you at the table? You did say you're an attention whore. Was there more to it than that?
I would say that a lot of the time at the table, well, I've only really played at one table, and that table was sand. So most
I think we can use the term table as sort of a mnemonic device for all of D&D.
I would say most of my play has been, and like most people, I'm probably the worst at self-analyzing. That's why people have problems, because they can't self-analyze. But I would say I'm probably more of an enabler, or I try to be. I would like to see that in myself in my play. I try to enable other people. I probably am most, and one of the reasons why I do enjoy playing an ethos-based character is because I tend to, if nothing is happening, I will just go do something as my character. So I tend to play those sort of characters. Mm-hmm. I very rarely play an overly cautious character. I am overly cautious in real life, and I don't. And that, I guess that's my escapism. I throw caution to the wind because I don't care if my character dies.
Yep.
Yeah.
I get it. My games, my favorite thing in the world is to play some type of fighter, barbarian, murder hobo. It just like, oh, we're not doing anything, I'm gonna go smash stuff. Like that's just, it's like dealing with a violent toddler is how most of my characters end up playing. So I'm gonna say you get one more question for me, I get one more question for you, and then we're gonna go ahead and wrap up for tonight and let people go and get to making turkeys and stuffing and whatever else they've got to do.
Right.
So fire, you get one more.
Okay. Let's learn more about Chris. Are you comfortable letting us know how long you've been married?
Yeah, sure. So my wife and I celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary in July. We got married 3 days before what would have been the anniversary of our first date. So we knew each other for 362 days before we got married. Yeah.
I feel like we're the same person because I only dated my wife for a year, and we've been married it'll be 14 years this December. So it's another check in the box. Like I'm actually, if you look at the multiverse, I've just been like transplanted, however many years differently than you. Okay.
Yeah. What
interesting.
There's bound to be more than that. Like that's a pretty straightforward question. What else do you have on the get to know Chris list? We can take that as a couple of things.
All right. Without, I guess I should ask a D&D question. All right. So
ask whatever you want to ask.
Are you allowed to tell a horror story? Have you ever had like a real bad experience as a player or as a dungeon master that is appropriate to talk about?
I think anything that would be a horror story are probably more things that I reflect on now as an adult about the games we played as early adolescents.
Right.
Because there was some terrible stuff in some of those games. And definitely things that were they to happen at a game that I was playing in now, I would draw a hard line in the sand and say, we're done here. We're now going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And so at the time they weren't horror stories, but at this point in my life, I do look back at them and go, oh yeah, no, that wasn't okay. The closest I probably come in more recent memory, and it's more of a, I don't know that it qualifies as a horror story, but it is one of those sorts of, oh, this could absolutely have not gone the way I wanted it to. Was in my home game. My son is a player in the game. We all play remotely. It is a group of a friend of mine and his friends, and my son jumped in with us, never having played before. And he plays this weird magic user, and just a completely creepy character. And cut the head off of a hydra that we killed and had the head turned into a cloak to wear, sort of thing.
Yeah.
To the extent where the DM said, you realize if you wear this in public, I'm going to give you a disadvantage on almost every social interaction roll. Like, you're just going to freak people out. Well, our characters have this very kind of older brother, younger brother kind of thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And he was about to go and start looting graves. And my character just was not having any of it. And I decided, we're using basic fantasy rules is our rule set. So it's basically a 1E clone.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten how squishy magic users are at level 2.
Yep.
So I go and essentially do that to his forehead in game and dropped him to 1 hit point.
Yep.
And then we immediately wound up in a fight. So it's definitely not your classic horror stories. Those would have come in my youth, but definitely one of those, oh yeah, this did not go the way I planned on it. I may have just wrecked somebody's fun pretty badly.
Yeah.
Which to me is a horror story, right? Like the last thing that you want to do is capriciously do something that then ruins the game for another person, right?
Right.
If you're playing your character and your character, while being a good party member, does something and it ends up getting another member of the party killed, that's going to happen. It's unfortunate. It can be very upsetting, but it's part of the game. When you go off on a meta level and do something to be a dick,
right,
and then it ruins somebody else's fun, that's no good.
Yeah. I have to say that you just sparked like so many different questions, because I personally, with my son being 5, I am so excited, and I know it's way too early to start him playing Dungeons and Dragons. I am so excited to potentially play with him in the future, because I know a lot of parents who do this and they post about it. And like, this is what I did with my 7 or 9-year-old or like 13-year-old. 13 is generally where you would start in earnest.
Yeah. So I had gotten him. So he's about to be 20. And I had gotten him the red box when he was maybe 12, 13-ish, 7th grade, something like that. And he and his cousin pulled it out and looked at it for 2 hours one night. And that was it. Went away. Never touched it again. And I was like, fine, whatever. I do not push, you should be into X.
Yep.
I drop things off that I think are interesting, pick them up and run with them, or don't. But then our current game kicked off basically right after pandemic lockdowns started. It was a group that had wanted to get a game going, and everybody was too busy, and everybody was too busy, and everybody was too busy. And now suddenly everybody's at home. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, we can make a Thursday night date. It doesn't get in the way of anything. And my son had come home from school because he had to get out of school. So he was back here, and I just said, hey, me and Mike and John and these other guys, we're gonna jump in and play a D&D game. Do you want to jump in? he's like, yeah, sure, why not? So it's him and a bunch of, dudes in their late 30s and early 40s.
Hey son, you want to join this D&D game with Mike and the boys?
Yeah, but it's been great. And I mean, he's continued to play while he's away at school. It's our regular Thursday night thing. We took about an 8-week break. We had played through a module, finished that, and then made a flip over and played this Nordic horror RPG called Vazen for about 6-8 weeks. We just finished up a couple of adventures in that, so we're going back to the D&D characters for a while here, right after the holiday. So
yeah, that's so cool. Like for me, the way that I equate it in my brain is that, so I put my kids into jujitsu because A, because I could, and then B, because I think it's great for them. And me being a practitioner myself, like off and on for so many years, that I'm like, I see all these benefits that I could have had like as a kid if this had been available to me, but it wasn't, because there's just no, jiu-jitsu wasn't like a thing in my area growing up at all. So there wasn't even really the option. But like seeing my kids in jiu-jitsu, like I get excited to bring my kids to jiu-jitsu. I love watching my kids do jiu-jitsu, and like me working with them on like little things. Like right now they're just rolling around and like doing front rolls, and like sure. I think Finley is more excited about it than Beckett for whatever reason. Like she just wants to kill people. I don't know. She's much more aggressive than my son.
That's a second born.
Yeah, she's had to fight for everything.
Yep.
And that's the way we keep it in the household. You got to fight for dinner. But
burn your calories.
Yeah, but for me, just thinking about it and having like a DM player relationship with the kids would be so cool when they get older, because it's a shared storytelling experience, very similar to how people used to be around the fire telling stories. And it's such an earthy, like I want to say, like just ancient thing that I can tap primal. Into. Yeah, it's primal, and I can have that experience with my kids using a just rule set written on a PDF or written on a printout, binded book, and just interacting with them in that way, and like seeing their creativity, and like interacting with them as someone not myself, and like watching them have fun. I'm really looking forward to that because of that aspect. I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much that they'll like the game.
Right.
But I read all these stories from all these parents that DM for their kids, and I'm like, I want that so bad.
You got to trick them. That's the single biggest parenting advice that I give to everybody. Actually, the single biggest parenting advice I give to everybody is yes and.
Oh yeah.
When my son was 10 years old, we butted heads every minute of every day, and I found myself defaulting to my father's parenting style, which was to be a raving lunatic. I love Jim Brennan to death. That man slept 4 hours a night at best for about 30 years. He was a raving lunatic. And I found myself defaulting to that same place. Like I said no to everything. I raved about everything. And one day I went, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And made the decision that unless I had to say no to something, the answer was yes. And the answer was yes. And what do you need to make it happen? And that completely changed our relationship. Me saying effectively, you have all the room in the world to explore and adventure and try. If I got to pull the leash and tug you back, I'm going to, but you're going to know that the only reason I'm doing it is because there's no other choice. Like in this dynamic, in this situation, I got to say no. But otherwise, it's a big world. Go make it your own. And I think that's one of the things that led to now with him being a grown man, he's an adult. the fact that he wants to be in this game at this point, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's definitely it's such a give and take relationship too, and how you communicate that in a lot of ways you are very vulnerable, like when you're playing a role or you're doing anything at the table with these other people. This is a shared space, and nobody is. I mean, like you could say that the game master or the dungeon master is the boss, but like nobody's technically the boss because
right.
you don't have to take orders from anybody. Like you could get up and just leave at
Right.
any point. Like I'm sick of your shit. I'm leaving. Flip the table and then
Right.
and then leave. So I mean, like I think that's such an interesting like trick. It's a mind game you can play on your children potentially to get them to interact with you and communicate and trust you more because you have bonded with them over this game and interacted with them and communicated with them in so many different ways. So
yeah, for sure.
Super looking for it. I'm trying not to get my hopes up. I'm like, I need to suppress it. I need to push down my feelings. I need to push down all these feelings that I have. You know how to do that really well.
You get to have all of the feelings that you want to have. Temper the expectations. There's a difference.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Fair enough.
All right, I'm going to ask you one last question, and
Okay.
then we'll wrap up here. What do you, as a player, need from me as a DM for you to have your best experience at the table?
I guess I'm gonna try not to cop out. I was just gonna say yes but I think that's such an important thing. Being a DM is the yes and part of it. I think that thus far in the way that we've communicated, you have already been that way, so I already know how it's going to be, I believe, unless you're just so two-faced that I have no idea. But yeah, just being yes and I think is probably the biggest thing you could do. And
okay.
And I'm very interested in I'm very interested in problems. How does the party resolve like problems that are complex and cannot be resolved with combat? I'm interested in those kind of problems.
Good.
Great. So yeah, we're good. Great.
Good. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you don't have to kick me out of the group now. Great.
No. Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
See what tomorrow brings.
Yeah.
So there is one last question, and it comes from Cross. Cross would like to know when the fourth kid is coming, so you can have a full adventuring party.
Oh, the fourth child. All right. So first of all, I was talked into the third one, and that's enough for me. I'm good with that. I don't need a basketball team, and I'm sorry to any future children I accidentally have. Now that I said that. I'm good with 3. 3 is just it's already enough as it is. Now they outnumber us. I don't need them to outnumber us by 2 now. So.
Well, you've already lost, so the numbers are pretty much irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
Now you're definitely into a Clausewitzian war of attrition, so it's pretty well over.
Yeah, they can maneuver on me now. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Well, Jake, thank you for taking the time. Everybody in chat, thanks for throwing questions our way and being a part of the discussion. As we get ready to head forward into our new campaign, we hope all of you will come in and join us for that. That will begin December the 16th, 7 p.m. Eastern here on Twitch. We'll then be uploading those as VODs after the fact over on our YouTube channel as well. Like, share, subscribe, all of that fun social media stuff that seems to be important in the world today. But again, really appreciate everybody taking the time and spending some time with us. I know for me, it may sound trite, but I genuinely am thankful for all of these players that have decided to jump in, for Cross, who has stepped up to the plate and done such an amazing job of helping us build out our production and creating a ton of stuff. The artists that we're working with, Mac and Mel, and the work that they've done. And to all of you who keep showing up for these goofy little live streams and jumping in. And I can't wait to hear what you think of this campaign when we go forward. So for everybody in the US, I hope you have a safe and happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. Be careful with whatever your traveling is. Please wear a mask and all of that good stuff. And we will see you all soon. Cross, thanks again for your help today. See everybody soon. Cheers.